TrueNAS is a very widespread NAS platform for home users and small businesses. And I've now seen that the upcoming release of TrueNAS Scale is going to come with Incus pre-installed. So that got me interested in looking at what they've done and how you get to use Incus through this very common NAS platform. I'm Stefan Greber. I'm the project leader of Linux containers and one of the Incus maintainers. So today we're going to take TrueNAS Scale 2504 for a spin. It's currently in the release candidate state. It's planned for release in April, so over the next few weeks. To do this, what I've done is I've already downloaded the release candidate, and then we're going to test it in a Incus environment. So I've got that file here. The first thing I'll do is actually import it into as an ISO directly into Incus. That's going to take a little while because I'm not actually dealing with a local Incus server here. I'm actually importing that on another machine. So it's just doing that over the network, which, yeah, it's going to take a few seconds. So basically you just pass to Incus storage volume import, you pass the pool you want, the ISO file you have, what volume name you want, in this case TrueNAS install, and then tell it it's an ISO. And it's gonna transfer that ISO into Incus, create a volume that we can then easily attach to any VMs that we want. Once that's done, then we're going to need to actually get things into place. So that means creating an empty VM, making sure it's got enough CPU, enough memory, turning off Secure Boot because TrueNAS doesn't support it, and then adding some drives because this is a NAS, so it better have some drives. And at that point, should be able to start it, go through the installer, and then take a look at how that all works with Incus. And whether I'm done, there we go. Cool. So let's go ahead and create ourselves a new VM. So do create TrueNAS. We want a VM empty, and then CPU. Let's give it 4 CPUs. Memory, we're gonna do 8 gigs, and we don't want Secure Boot. So Secure Boot false. Okay. All right, next we need to create some drives. So storage volume create, still in the default pool, gonna do TrueNAS disk 1, size, just do 50 gigs, and it's a raw disk. There we go. Let's do 5 of those. That should let us do a nice RAID 5 inside of TrueNAS. So let's do that. 5 drives. And now to put everything together, so device add to the TrueNAS VM, the install disk, so install disk, source is default, pool is default, source is TrueNAS install, and we want to boot from that, so let's bump the priority to 10. And then let's go with the disk. So disk 1 is a disk. It's coming from the default pool, and its name is TrueNAS disk 1. Oh, actually, I'll just remove that. Okay, I'm gonna add it as a NVMe disk. Just make that a bit nicer. There we go. NVMe, and then rinse and repeat for disk 2 through to disk 5. And lastly 5. There we go. Okay, so now we should have a VM with an install disk with 5 disks attached. The VM has 4 CPUs, 8 gigs of RAM. Actually, let's go look at the config. So if we expand the full config for TrueNAS, there we go. Yep, 4 CPUs, 8 gigs of RAM, Secure Boot disabled. It's got the 5 drives attached. It's got a network card. It's got the install drive as priority, and it's got a basic 10 gigs system disk. So now TrueNAS and attached to the VGA console so we can see what's going on. There we go. And it's booting up. Okay, let's go through the install. All I'm gonna get dropped into the TrueNAS installer here. There we go. Install, pick the 10 gigs OS drive, proceed with the install, and then give ourselves an admin password. And then just wait for that to get formatted, and then that install to be unpacked on there. Shouldn't take too long. Okay. All right, so quarter of the way there, supposedly. All right, so okay, so it's already doing post-install steps. So it's 50% was just the unpacking, and then the rest is just configuring the system before it reboots, installing grub, and we're done. Okay, cool. Reboot and remove the install media. Okay, so I can actually shut down the system at that point. There we go, and we can, as they requested, remove the install media. So TrueNAS install, remove it. Oops. I used the wrong disk name, so let me just fix that. Okay, I'm just gonna stop the VM, remove it. It was just named install. There we go. And start the VM. Okay. TrueNAS Scale. Cool. Let's put that. And see what it does. I suspect it's probably gonna give me its IP address or something, and we can access the rest from my web browser. But first it needs to actually boot. So just waiting for that. Okay. Waiting on disks, sure. Okay. So I think it's actually starting all of the management daemons and Polyweb UI and all that stuff at this point. So that's loading up. Which means it should be good to go in just a few more seconds. Actually, one thing I'd like to check, so this is based on Debian and includes Incus, which means it's got a good chance of having the Incus agent actually pre-baked. So while this stuff boots up, looks like it's about done anyways, but oh yeah, it's doing something. There we go, for the IP address and everything now. Cool. All right, so we know the IP. What I wanted to check is if it lists directly there, and it does. So we can actually just Incus exec directly inside of the TrueNAS environment, saving us SSH and all that stuff, because they have the Incus agent pre-baked. So that's very convenient. Can probably close this one. Don't really need it anymore, I don't think. And then what we need to do is actually hit it up on its IP address. So let's pick that IP and then just go with, as it's on a remote system, so I need to use the right option. There we go. Then it's TrueNAS admin and then the password from the install step, which in this case is admin. And here we go. We're inside of TrueNAS. Let's check if there's any update at this point. It looks happy, no updates available. Okay. Cool. So let's take a look around. It shows memory, CPU. Okay, it's fine. I'm not using any CPU. No storage configured right now. IP address. We only have one network interface. So that looks all good. There's a configure button up here. Okay, it's just for the layout. Let's go storage and create a pool. I don't know, just call it local. No need for encryption, data layout. What do we want? Let's do just a RAID Z1. That should be fine. So allowing for one disk to go down, automatic disk selection, or you can manually select the disks. Okay, well, let's do the manual option then. We want disk one. How does that work? Click add to add first VDEV. Sure. At least 3 days drag and drop. Okay, cool. All right, so let's do all 5 drives. Here we go. Save selection. Okay. So we've got 1 VDEV of 5 drives. That should be fine. And it's what? Just want to check what did it do? 200 gigs usable capacity. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a very easy one for you. Good. So that's correct. Next, no log device, no spare, no cache, no specific metadata. Don't want to deal with dedup. And let's go create pool. Pool name, I mean, presumably it's just going to take local. Yeah, okay, continue. We should get a pool out of this shortly. There we go. Get local pool, topology is all good. 1 RAID Z1, 5 disks behind it, no caching or nothing. Usable capacity 190 gigs. And it's doing auto trim is off, but okay. I would probably actually want that on, given this is backed by SSDs. Okay. Smart is not going to be useful given it's all virtual drives at this point. Okay, so that's storage. We could create, I guess, data sets and then expose those over the network. I mean, it's a NAS after all. But what's really interesting is this tab, the instances tab, because that should be Incus. So what does it say? Containers in virtual machines powered by Incus are experimental and only recommended for advanced users. Make all configuration changes using TrueNAS UI. Operating using the command line is operations using the command line are not supported. Okay, pretty sure the command line will still be fine, but I guess they don't want things to get out of sync. So let's do local storage pool, networking, just automatic everything. Let's go. That should give us like an Incus BR0, I guess, with IPv4, IPv6 on it or something. Okay, virtualization settings been applied. Okay, and now we should be able to create an instance. So I'm gonna immediately go and do something they just told us not to do, which is going through the command line. I wanna see what they've actually done to Incus. So I suspect it's the Debian version. Yeah, 603, that's the Debian version of it. That makes sense. Now let's just take a quick look at server config. There's nothing. Storage list, there is one pool, which presumably is just using a dataset within the thing. Yeah, it's .ixvert within our pool. So it just created a dataset for that. That's fine. Network, what did they do for network? Incus BR0, IPv4, IPv6, box standard default, nothing weird. Profiles, default TrueNAS profile. So you did change the name of the default profile, or the description. But other than that, it's perfectly standard. No minimum size, maximum size, nothing configured. Okay. And I'm assuming just default project. I don't think there's anything weird there. Yeah, default project, all features enabled, nothing weird. Okay, so it's very, very, very simple Incus setup. Now let's see how that works. So let's create a new VM, or create a new instance. And let's do D13 container. So let's do a Debian 13 container. Press catalog. Okay, so one Debian was Trixie. Debian Trixie default. Yeah, I want this one. Yeah. Okay, CPU memory, so I guess by default it just takes everything. That's our default, that makes sense. So yeah, I guess we can do that, it's fine. Extra disk, proxies, network. You can pass some amount of USB stuff too, and GPUs. That's pretty good to even allow that for containers. So let's just create basic one. So that should be downloading the container image. So it's not very verbose as to what's going on. Oh, there we go. Now it's downloading. Cool. Downloading, unpacking. So they're using the progress details that we send over the API. So that's cool. And now this is container. It's running. We see what image it came from. Secure boot. Yeah, for a container, that'd be weird if it was enabled. So it looks like it's a bit VM centric, but anyways. Metrics are there, so they're picking up the API metrics, so that's good. Sure. And we can see the ID map ranges. I don't know why you'd really want to show that, but I guess you can. Did they do anything weird, actually, speaking of that? Okay, so there's configuration, they only do global settings. What's in global settings? Okay, just the stuff from the initialization. I'm just gonna go look at what they did with that container. The ID map stuff looks slightly weird. The 13 container. So what's going on? ID map current. Wow, that's an unusual map. Okay. So they pass through UID and GID 568, causing a gap in the middle of the range. Okay, not sure why, but sure. And then the rest is still kind of weird. So there's like an odd sub-UID setup in there. Oh yeah, there is. Yeah, so they're definitely reserving a whole bunch of UIDs and GIDs for the system and move the containers further up the range. Probably because they need some UIDs and GIDs for the NAS features and they don't want Incus to interfere with that, which makes sense. The other thing that's kind of odd is the boot auto start false. So that means that we've got user auto start true, boot auto start false. So I guess that means that they want to be in control of starting up instances themselves. Okay, does the shell work? Yeah, that works great. Cool. Going back is not obvious though. You need to kind of go back to the instance list, I think. Okay, let's create a new instance and do a VM to try to compare. So D13 VM, and let's again do Debian Trixie default there. Let's do that. And this one, I mean, you do need, if it's a VM, oh, whoops, that cleared the image. Okay, so you can do from ISO or boot from a volume directly in there. So that's convenient if you want to do Windows or something like that. Debian Trixie, sure, let's do that. And then CPU memory. Okay, so let's do 2 CPUs, 2 gigs of RAM. And it lets us do a few more things down there. Yeah, so PCI pass-through is supported, that's cool. VNC, okay. Why not Spice? Okay, so they're doing VNC. Let's just keep it off, see what happens. Yeah, secure boot is fine with that one, and we can do a TPM just for fun. Let's go. Enter number of cores. Oh, it did megabytes. Okay, let's do units then. Cool, 2 gigs. All right, so they're nodding that now. Yeah, I think the console setup might be a bit weird. I'm not sure why they would do VNC. In our own UI, we can do Spice natively, and VNC is not something that Incus supports. So they must have gone behind Incus's back a bit on that one. Anyway, VM. Okay, so we've got 2 things here. Okay, shell and console. All right. Console, is that a text console? Yeah, it is a text console. Okay. So they don't do the VGA through Spice. I think they only do it through by going through their VNC option, which is slightly weird, but okay. I mean, most people just want a shell anyways. What's going on? This is not Bash. What shell did they use? They used SH. Huh. Okay, so their UI defaults to SH for the shell, which has the benefit of working on distros like Alpine, but has the downside of being Dash on Debian systems, Debian and Ubuntu systems, which is not a very pleasant experience. So you need to then run Bash manually to get a more fully featured shell. But okay, it's not the end of the world, but interesting. So yeah, again, metrics and stuff works well. It seems to be capturing metrics as soon as you switch to the VM, so there's no background metrics gathering that I can tell. But otherwise, it seems to be working reasonably well. Let's go look at the config for that VM, see what's going on there. If it's just the same as the container, or if there's more things for VMs. Okay, so the TPM that I selected. Oh, okay, that's a nice thing to see. So they default to NVMe for the disk, The downside to that is that, as you might have seen during VM boot, growPart didn't run because growPart is expecting the drive to be SCSI. So the VM's root disk didn't grow to the correct size. That's actually unfortunate. Maybe we can do something better in our images so that they work out of the box regardless of bus. But yeah, it's not ideal. We might be able to use dev disk by ID, maybe. But I think that still includes, let's see. Oops, I need to actually go in that VM. Okay. We do by ID. Yeah, so the bus name is included. So we need to use something else. Do we have part labels? Part UID. Oh, but we want the disk. Yeah, that's not an easy one. Anyway, yeah, the problem here is that the VM booted with 10 gigs and it probably only has 4 gigs partitioned. So that's slightly unfortunate. That's one of the downsides of them putting on the NVMe bus instead. If we go look at where's our units libsysmd, maybe is it in here? Nope, that's the agent. So it's probably in etc then. Incus growPart, yeah. So growPart expects SDA. So someone would need, like, if you're in that situation, you're gonna need to manually run the command on VME n1, 2, there we go, and then resize to FS on dev NVMe 0n1 p2. Okay, and now you've got the 10 gigs. So that's one of the downsides of booting off of NVMe or anything other than the default that I use SCSI, is that the online automatic resize of the disk doesn't work. But other than that, was there anything weird in that VM? So I guess for one thing, there's a raw ID map also on a VM, which is slightly unusual, but I mean, still used for direct file system mapping, so that might make sense. Secure boot is enabled because I told it to. By default, it wouldn't have been, which is slightly unfortunate, but that's fine. We actually do publish metadata in our images to know whether secure boot should be disabled or enabled. So it would have been nice to see that being used, but it's still an experimental feature. So maybe they'll add that later. And there's some VNC config stuff for if you turn on VNC, I guess. On the network side, it's just a tap into our bridge. So that's all normal. Let's maybe look at some of the other features. So if we do stop, wait for container to shut down cleaning. Well, this is not a container, it's a VM. But I mean, I like the option at least. Okay. Let's see now. So we could add more NICs. We only have one, so that's fine. Disk. What can we do with disks? Okay. Kind of confused by this one actually. Yeah, let's skip that. Okay, so it's just general info for the VM. I didn't really create anything else inside of TrueNAS, so maybe we should try and do like create a zvar. Zval of, let's call it test extra disk size for the zval. Let's make it 10 gigs. Okay, 10 gig. And the rest we can keep as default, so let's do that. Okay, and let's create a file system, so like a data set. Okay, test extra file system. Go. Because like both of those should be something you can technically attach to a VM or to a container. I just don't know how easy they make it. So if we do disks, consider 10 gigs, we can increase the size of the disk, so that's cool. Let's do add. Okay. Oh, okay, cool. So we do see it that way. All right. So then I should be able to add that as an extra disk. What options do I have on there? Not much. Okay, just what I pick, and they pick the name. They don't let me choose what bus that goes on or anything. Okay, that's fine. Devices, what else do I get on there? Pass-through or USB, okay. Well, so it doesn't look like you can do file system pass-through, at least not currently. We can try starting that back up. And on this one, disks, what can I do? Because this one, it's a container, it can't actually do. Okay, so it's a container, which means it can use the extra file system that way. What's weird is that the VM could also have done it. The exact same feature would have worked with the VM through the agent. So I'm not sure why it's not allowed, but okay. So in the case of the container, let's pass it that way and then see what that looks like. Container, where's the... I'm missing the... how to get to a terminal right now. Oh, yeah, shell. Cool. And we can see MNT file system. We see the entire pool because there's no limit on the data sets, so 180 gigs. Okay, that's fine. And then VM, if I do the shell for the VM, get into bash. So in the case of the VM, it's not mounted because it's a raw block device. Okay, so that's interesting. So the root disk, they always do NVMe, but then additional disk on the Virtual SCSI bus. I don't know why that is. Let's check. Yep, sure enough, this one is on NVMe. Additional disks are not. Okay, that's kind of weird, but as I said, like it's still experimental. I expect a bunch more features and polish will go into that. It's definitely a pretty good experience. I mean, for anyone who just wants to quickly run a bunch of containers, it will work just fine. For anyone who just wants to run a bunch of VMs, that will be just fine too. It looks like you can upload ISOs, you can upload raw disk images, so that's going to be convenient for things like Windows. I think the main issue with VMs really is the lack of the Spice integration in the UI, because if you can't easily directly through the UI interact with the Windows installer or that kind of stuff, that's not gonna be super convenient. And I'm not sure why they went with exposing VNC, which is not safe. Like VNC is not encrypted or anything, when you can relay Spice traffic through the UI and access it directly through the UI, which is what our own native UI does. And that works pretty well. It would have been reasonably easy for their own web server to effectively forward that traffic through, allowing for proper interaction with the Spice library, which also includes a bunch of niceties like copy paste, even USB pass-through and those kind of things. But maybe it's also like a kind of lack of time, and that's gonna come up later. All right, so that's looking pretty good. I guess if we look at the dashboard now, there's a bit more going on. You can see a bit of CPU usage, not much though. Storage has been set up. And yeah, I think, I mean, you know, for a lot of people, their NAS is basically the only server that they have at home or in their small business. So having Incus be right in there, having an easy way to run containers and VMs, that's really good to see. Another slight downside to them using a Debian base and using the native Debian packages instead of, for example, the packages that I publish to Zable, is that they're stuck with the LTS for now. And until around March, April next year, we don't have an LTS with OCI container support. Because if they could use one of the monthly releases instead, then they'd be able to run basically any Docker container on top of our system containers and virtual machines, which could be quite interesting. That would make it a lot easier for someone to, I don't know, run a Plex server, run something like that directly on there by effectively opening up the catalog of pre-built kind of appliance images significantly through having access to the Docker Hub and to other OCI registries. But I think it's a great first step. I'm definitely looking forward to see what's coming next, because that's pretty well integrated, pretty straightforward, seems to basically just work. And I think it wouldn't take a ton more effort to make it even more useful for a lot of people. So yeah, quite wondering what's gonna happen there. Actually, just saw the apps tab, so I kind of wonder what that does now. Okay, it's got a bunch of things. Does that have Plex? And if you do, what does that do? Doesn't have Plex. Okay. Let's try something else. So that's the self-hosted image. Set a pool to install. We've got a pool. I wonder if that's integrating. Actually, Plex just showed up here now. Huh. Anyway, let's try this guy and see what that does. Does it? I suspect that's going to install it directly on the OS and not within Incus. Using third-party application extends the feature. Does not. Yeah, that's fine. So like there is a built-in app store that does let you install a bunch of those applications I was thinking of that you could use as Docker containers on Incus. I think the difference is that they just put them directly, effectively bare metal on the system. What does it want? It's complaining about something missing. Database password. Is there something simpler than this one? Because I just want to try kind of the simplest thing they have to deploy. Same thing for, well, they're all pretty big things actually. Pi-hole might be reasonably small. Sure. What do we have in there? Yeah, there's quite a lot of stuff going on actually. Maybe try draw.io. What does that do? Okay, name of application, version, sure. User groups seem to have default for just about everything, so let's go with that. Let's see what it does. Pulling images, okay. Kind of makes me wonder what they're gonna do. Are they also running Docker in parallel to Incus for that? Is that what's going on? Yep, Docker entry point. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so that's how they do it, is that they've got both Incus and Docker running on the same system. And so for the applications, a bunch of those are going to just run inside of Docker. I guess that's fine. So that's why they don't really need the OCI support of Incus if they have Docker alongside it. Now that makes me wonder if my networking still works, because Docker is known for its bad interactions with Incus. So I kind of want to see if that still works. Nope, it does not. Right, okay. Not really unexpected. As I said, like Incus, Docker has an annoying tendency to mess with networking system-wide, which apparently it still did here. So usually, I mean, the trick is to set the policy at that point to for forwards to accept, I think, and that usually bypasses the issue. Is that the one? Nope. So the fact that Docker has a tendency to go and change the default policy on everything. That it will still accept here. Input, output, will all accept. Oh, but Docker runs first and intercepts everything before we have any chance to do anything ourselves. Also, I suspect that Incus might be doing NFT and Docker is doing IP tables. Yep. Okay, so that's causing more fun because now they're using both firewall technologies are used at the same time, which causes another set of conflict. So yeah, there might be some work to be done there. Otherwise, people who use both the applications running on Docker and Incus at the same time might have a bit of a fun time. Especially since you're not supposed to be using the command line, so you can't just follow our normal instructions to disable some of the network, some of the firewall features of Docker to make it behave. But hopefully something that the TrueNAS team can look at before final release, try and make things behave a bit better. And it could also be interesting to consider, at some point in the future, whether to still use Docker for the applications and maybe move everything onto Incus, since newer Incus releases do support native OCI, and so should be able to run most of those applications without needing to have both Incus and Docker running on the same system. But yeah, in any case, it makes sense to try and make both of them kind of play nice together, which typically means telling Docker to do a lot less firewalling on its own. All right, so that was a look through TrueNAS and kind of what they've done with Incus. I think, I mean, given that there is that app store that's Docker-based, I think a lot of the interest for people is going to be around running virtual machines on Incus and then using those Docker containers for the rest. And it looks like it's doing a pretty good job at getting that stuff in place. There are definitely a few minor issues that could be resolved pretty quickly to just make things slightly more polished. But it's an experimental feature, so can't blame them too much for that. And then the longer term discussion of, what to do with applications and instances and how do they both play together. Like, do you really want to have Docker and Incus always running on the same system? And if you do, then what do you do for networking so that there's no conflict on that front? But yeah, quite excited to see that roll out to everyone in the next few weeks as it hits stable, and then see what people do with it and see what comes up next as far as new features for TrueNAS Scale. Thanks for watching. If you've got any questions, feel free to leave them down below. But this is TrueNAS, so I'm not particularly familiar with it. But if you've got any comments, any pointers or anything, that could be interesting. If you've got any questions about Incus, feel free to leave them down there, or you can go on our community forum where there might even be people who are significantly more familiar with TrueNAS than I am. All right. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.